Bangkok, 1959. DJ Enright, the Mendicant Professor, has a confrontation with Royal Thai police. He recalls the incident in his memoirs. DJ Enright writes, "I wantonly attacked some 15 Thai policemen, finally obliging them to beat me up in self-defense. Returning home from a party, I found the road blocked just before our house by an empty car which had one of its doors hanging open. As we drew up to it, my wife closed the door and we drove safely past. Except that at this moment, a number of what turned out to be policemen emerged from the brothel opposite, under the impression that damage had been done to the car. The car was not theirs, it had been borrowed by one of them, a young lieutenant of police. Clients of the brothel were generally good-tempered, even jovial. These were not. Violence ensued with remarkable speed. As a pacifist of long standing, and indeed as an averagely sensible person, it's not only wrong but also foolish to propose physical force to a crowd of armed policemen. I offered no resistance. Admittedly, I suggested that we should send for the police, which annoyed my assailants. My wife, unwisely, did offer resistance, to the extent of slapping the face of a policeman, alas, the lieutenant himself, who was kicking my lower vertebrae in a manner reminiscent of Thai boxing, and hence I felt called upon to step between them. In fear and trembling, as I later heard, a Japanese consul was watching the proceedings from his bedroom window. But I was not Japanese. Not all the policemen were drunk, certainly, for when one of them got out his revolver, another knocked it to the ground. I was especially interested in this lesser scuffle on the fringe of the greater one. Unhappily, though I knew some of our local law officers quite well, I knew none of these, nor did I find an acquaintance at the police station to which we were eventually taken. Here I was thrust into the communal cage, a crowded but peaceful and friendly place, rather like the opium den. One old lag pushed across a bald tire for me to sit on. Another offered a stick of mosquito-repelling incense, while my wife, since the police couldn't decide what to do with her, was thrust out into the street. Feeling extremely sore in more ways than one, and hoping to get the problem of the brothel parking settled once and for all, I made the gross mistake of telling my wife to ring up the British Embassy. After some lapse of time, a bad-tempered consul turned up at the station, and having refused to speak to or listen to me, he concocted, off his own bat, some story of how I was drunk but otherwise harmless, and would apologise on the morrow to the man whose face my wife had slapped. I remember signing an agreement that I would pay for the damage caused to the plaintiff's car, for the plaintiffs were still too excited to notice that the car hadn't been touched. The money was never claimed. Through the good offices of the consul, I was then transferred from the womb-like comfort of the cage to an office where 2 policemen bearing rifles kept watch over me through the night. There had been painfully little evidence that night of the characteristic Thai jollity and their famous permissiveness. The guards watched with hostile suspicion from a distance. I may have been represented to them as an inveterate cop-killer, and they refused my offerings of sandwiches, brought along with coffee and cigarettes by a friend, with an untypical brusqueness. During the tussle, I had attempted to identify myself as a professor, an ajahn, at the, I was hoping, revered Chulalongkorn University, or School of Great Learning. A professor, they jeered. To us, you look like a cowboy. Cowboy, I must explain, was a slang term in current use, meaning thug or gangster. I chain-smoked to keep off the mosquitoes stinging.